She gave him everything, but the billionaire still chose his mistress while she was pregnant. A trembling heart can hide unimaginable secrets. For Nicole Parker, stepping into James Harrington's shimmering world of penthouses and private jets felt like a dream she never dared to believe. The polished marble floors and glittering chandeliers seemed to promise a fairy tale love, an everlasting devotion. But behind the mirrored walls of lavish soirees, a storm was brewing. The man she adored concealed desires that would unravel her illusions in the most devastating way. Torn between hope and betrayal, Nicole would soon learn that trust can be a fragile mirror. One crack, and it all shatters. Prepare yourself for a story drenched in heartbreak and hidden motives. Nicole Parker was never a woman who sought the spotlight. Born in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston, she spent her formative years in an environment where people worked hard, minded their own business, and went to bed exhausted but content. Nicole's parents, Gregory and Linda Parker, were honest, humble folks who taught her the importance of genuine relationships and persistence. They were not wealthy, but every meal was filled with love. Every holiday was warmed by heartfelt laughter. From a young age, Nicole had a yearning for something more. She wanted to see the world, experience new cultures, and break free from the limitations that seemed to define her parents' generation. She pursued an education in marketing at a local college. To pay her tuition, she waitressed at a family diner and, on weekends, picked up shifts at the nearby boutique. The hustle taught her resilience. She developed a refined presence, a warmth that seemed to attract everyone around her, and a quiet determination that nothing would stop her once she set her mind to a goal. Yet, she never considered herself the type who would catch the eye of a millionaire. That extraordinary moment happened purely by chance, or so it seemed at the time. Nicole was working a gala event at the prestigious Parkside Hotel, moonlighting as a hostess to earn extra money. The grand ballroom was adorned with cascading orchids and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Smooth jazz music played in the background as Boston's elite arrived in sleek cars and designer gowns. Nicole was tasked with greeting guests at the door, guiding them to their seats, and ensuring everyone had a glass of champagne in hand. Halfway through the evening, a tall figure with a commanding presence approached. He wore a tailored midnight blue suit that accentuated his athletic build, and the casual elegance of his walk hinted at a confidence. Money often buys, but cannot fully teach. James Harrington, at only 34 years old, was already a renowned venture capitalist who had earned the admiration and envy of many. He was the type who exuded power and quiet magnetism. Rumor had it that he'd turned modest tech startups into billion-dollar successes overnight. The name Harrington was whispered in hushed tones, an emblem of ambition and wealth. When he first smiled at Nicole, she felt as though the spotlight of the entire ballroom was directed at her. He asked a simple question about the evening's agenda, a question she had answered for countless other attendees, but the intensity in his gaze made her stammer. Nicole composed herself and gave him the best hostess explanation she could manage, all the while noticing the flicker of intrigue in his eyes. He thanked her politely and moved on, leaving her heart racing. She thought nothing more of it until the end of the night, when she was wiping down tables and collecting stray napkins. James Harrington reappeared. He offered to help her, a gesture so unexpected that Nicole couldn't quite believe a man of his stature would do such a thing. "You seemed so organized at the door," he said, picking up a crumpled napkin from the floor. "I figured I should contribute." Nicole laughed, her eyes sparkling despite her exhaustion. "I appreciate it, but you really don't have to get your hands dirty. Isn't that what millionaires pay staff for?" James shrugged, a boyish grin on his face that instantly made him less intimidating. Maybe, but I prefer not to forget what it feels like to do things myself. He tossed the napkin into a nearby bin. And maybe I'm just looking for an excuse to talk to you. That was the first moment Nicole felt a twinge in her chest that whispered, "Be careful. This might be bigger than you realize." Over the next several weeks, James made a point of crossing paths with Nicole. Sometimes he would show up at the boutique just before closing time, claiming he was in the neighborhood. Other times, she would spot his sleek black sedan parked near the diner, and before she knew it, he'd walk in wearing an apologetic smile. "I got lost on the way to a meeting, mind if I grab a quick meal here?" Their conversations were light, punctuated by gentle flirtation. James asked about her life, her ambitions, what she did for fun. Nicole answered honestly, though she often felt self-conscious about her humble background. One evening, he offered her a ride home after a late shift at the boutique. Sitting in the plush leather interior of his car, Nicole fiddled with her hands. The crisp scent of his cologne filled the cabin. Her heart hammered as he glanced her way with that same mixture of curiosity and admiration. She could see his reflection in the tinted windows and noticed a seriousness in his eyes she hadn't detected before. "Nicole," he said quietly, "I'd like to take you to dinner sometime. A proper dinner. Would you be interested?" She nearly said yes too quickly, her nerves making her swallow hard. "Sure," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. "That would be nice." So began a whirlwind romance that swept Nicole into the glitzy circles of James's world. He took her to high-end restaurants where servers treated them like royalty. They attended art auctions, charity galas, and business dinners, where she found herself mingling with people whose names she recognized from financial news segments. Yet, despite the opulence, James had a way of grounding her. He would whisper jokes in her ear about how pretentious some of the gatherings were, or slip away with her early to grab takeout from a neighborhood joint he swore had the best burgers in the city. Over a span of months, Nicole eased into this extraordinary life. Although she was dazzled by the constant excitement, she never lost her common sense or her strong moral footing. She respected her relationship with James, trusting his sincerity, even as she felt she was living in a dream. 3 months into their relationship, James invited Nicole to a private dinner on the rooftop of one of his luxury buildings. Soft candlelight bathed the rooftop garden, and the city skyline twinkled around them. A small ensemble played gentle classical music in the corner. Waitstaff brought out a 4-course meal, each plate more exquisite than the last. Nicole was more nervous than she'd ever been. She wondered if the question was coming, that question every young woman in love secretly fantasizes about. But she also thought, it's too soon. After all, they had been dating for mere months. Still, her heart pounded at the possibility. Halfway through dessert, James stood up. "Come here," he said, extending a hand to her. Nicole rose, her knees trembling. He guided her to the edge of the rooftop, the bustling city below them. She could hear her heartbeat drumming in her ears. "I've been looking for something my entire life," James said, his voice quivering slightly, "and I thought I'd find it in my success, in my investments, or in traveling the world. But now I know I was really searching for you." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a glittering ring, an elegant band with a single radiant diamond. He whispered, "Nicole Parker, will you marry me?" She was breathless. Tears brimmed at the corners of her eyes. Yes, she thought, over and over. Yes, she managed to say aloud, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. A few servers discreetly cheered from the corner. James and Nicole embraced. He kissed her deeply, and for a moment the rest of the city faded away. In that instant, Nicole believed with all her heart that she was living a fairy tale. With the engagement came more public attention. Magazines that reported on Boston's social elite picked up on the story. Millionaire venture capitalist James Harrington engaged to small-town beauty Nicole Parker. Gossip columns feasted on every detail, from the cut of her ring to speculation about the wedding date. Nicole tried not to let the intrusion bother her. After all, wasn't this what James's world was like? She took the changes in stride, balancing wedding plans with her part-time work and finishing the last of her college credits. But as she plunged deeper into James's circles, she began to notice certain glances, raised eyebrows, and hushed whispers whenever she walked into a room. Something was off. One evening, at a lavish cocktail party celebrating yet another tech partnership James had brokered, Nicole caught her reflection in the large mirrored walls of the Harrington penthouse. She wore a designer gown, courtesy of James's personal shopper, and diamond earrings he had gifted her that afternoon. She looked sophisticated, but she couldn't shake the sense of not belonging. Moving through the crowd, smiling at acquaintances and investors, Nicole felt out of place. Most of them were pleasant enough to her face, but there was an undercurrent of judgment, as though they viewed her as an outsider who had somehow lucked into this life. It was around this time that Nicole met Vanessa Caldwell. Vanessa was an alluring brunette in her late 20s with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper sense of style. She had been mingling with a group of men near the built-in bar, laughing at something one of them said. When Vanessa's gaze landed on Nicole, she broke into a predatory smile. "There you are," Vanessa said, gliding across the room in her figure, hugging black dress. "I've been dying to meet the woman who captured James Harrington's heart." Nicole felt the energy shift. There was a strange heat in Vanessa's voice, an implication that suggested something deeper than idle curiosity. "Pleasure to meet you," Nicole responded politely. "I'm Nicole." "Oh, I know who you are," Vanessa said with a dismissive laugh. "I'm an old friend of James's. We went to the same finishing school for a while. Our families have known each other for years." Nicole tried to hide her discomfort. She wondered why James had never mentioned Vanessa. She didn't want to seem insecure, so she politely asked about Vanessa's life instead. Vanessa rattled off details about her travels, her philanthropic work in Europe, and her roles on the boards of various fashion houses. Her tone was friendly, but her eyes never left Nicole's face, as if she were sizing her up. From that moment, Nicole couldn't erase the suspicion that Vanessa's presence brought a crackle of tension in the air. Something about Vanessa was too poised, too smooth, and too familiar with James's circle. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa popped up everywhere Nicole went. At dinner parties, at charity events, at the fundraiser James hosted for a new children's hospital. Vanessa was always there, perfectly dressed, always beaming at James with a knowing smile that unsettled Nicole. One night, after a particularly extravagant gala, Nicole noticed James and Vanessa having an intense conversation in the corner. When Nicole approached, Vanessa pivoted with that same smile and said, "Just catching up on old times. I'll see you both later," before disappearing into the crowd. Nicole tried to shake off the gnawing suspicion that something was amiss. However, the tension crept into her relationship with James. She found herself asking subtle questions about Vanessa, only to be met with dismissive answers. James assured Nicole that Vanessa was just an old family friend, someone who flitted in and out of Boston's high society, and that there was nothing more to it. Despite his assurances, Nicole felt a wedge forming. James became more protective of his phone. He would get sudden calls late at night and step outside or into another room to answer them. If Nicole asked who it was, his responses were vague, just a business associate, he'd say, or someone from the investment group in California. But there were times when Nicole could see that the caller's name was Vanessa Caldwell before James swiped the screen. The sweet man who had once surprised Nicole with private notes and affectionate text messages began to pull away. He grew moody, often agitated about business deals that suddenly seemed to take precedence over anything else. Nicole tried to be supportive. She reminded herself that James had always been driven by his career, that he was dealing with immense pressure, and that wedding plans, plus his business expansions, must be weighing him down. She convinced herself that everything would be fine once they got married, that the old James would re-emerge. Yet, somewhere deep in her heart, a small voice urged her to be wary. Approximately 6 months into their engagement, James surprised Nicole with the news that they would be moving into a newly purchased estate just outside Boston's city limits. It was a grand stone mansion situated on several acres of lush green land, complete with manicured gardens and a private driveway. Nicole was both excited and terrified by the enormity of it all. The estate was so lavish that it dwarfed the penthouse they had been staying in. She spent days decorating it, carefully selecting curtains, rugs, and furniture that reflected her taste while honoring James's preference for subtle luxury. In moments of solitude, she strolled through the gardens, imagining children playing on the lawn, family gatherings under the gazebo, and quiet evenings by the fireplace. It was, in every sense, the home she never thought she would have. But James's mood swings continued. On some days he was sweet, showering her with gifts and compliments, praising her for how well she was adapting to his world. On other days he was distant, leaving early in the morning and returning late at night, barely speaking to her before retreating into his private study. One afternoon, Nicole ventured into James's study to bring him a cup of coffee. She found him hunched over paperwork, his tie loosened, hair disheveled, a picture of stress. Before she could back away, he looked up and motioned her in. "Thanks," he mumbled, taking the coffee. She set the cup on the table and took a seat on the leather armchair by the window. "Is everything okay, James?" He rubbed his temples. "Investors are spooked about a new competitor. I might have to fly out to London next week." Nicole nodded, her stomach knotting. He'd been traveling so frequently, the wedding date kept getting pushed back or stayed vague. "I understand," she said softly, "but we do need to finalize some details for the ceremony. We still haven't chosen the caterer or the band." James sighed, pushing aside a stack of documents. "I know. It's just not the right time. Maybe we should postpone the wedding." The words stung more than Nicole anticipated. She felt her eyes well up with tears that she tried hard to hold back. "Postpone? Just for a few months," James said, his tone gentle but firm. "I want us to have the perfect wedding. Right now, with everything happening at work, I can't give it the focus it deserves." Deep in her heart, Nicole wondered if there was more to his reasons than business deals. She wanted to argue, but she also didn't want to pressure him. She swallowed her disappointment, nodding slowly, and left the room in silence. Not long after that conversation, Nicole began to feel queasy each morning. She attributed it to stress at first, telling herself that the tension between her and James was making her nauseous. Yet the sensation didn't go away. It only intensified, accompanied by dizziness and an aversion to smells she'd previously loved, like fresh coffee or James's cologne. Eventually, she decided to buy a home pregnancy test. Standing in the sumptuous bathroom of the new estate, her heart hammered in her chest as she followed the instructions meticulously. Time seemed to stretch into infinity as she waited for the results. The test confirmed her deepest suspicion. She was pregnant. A flood of emotions overwhelmed her. Excitement, because she had always wanted children. Fear, because she wasn't sure if this was the best time or if James was really ready for fatherhood. Hope, because maybe this child could bring them closer together, a symbol of love that might mend the cracks forming in their relationship. That evening, Nicole prepared James's favorite meal, rosemary-crusted lamb with mashed potatoes, and waited for him to come home. He arrived late, looking exhausted. She didn't want to spring the news on him the second he walked in, so she gave him space to shower and change. Finally, over dinner, Nicole took a deep breath and reached across the table for his hand. "James, there's something important I need to tell you." Her voice trembled with anticipation. He looked up from his plate, an unreadable expression on his face. "I'm pregnant," she said, tears filling her eyes as she searched his face for a reaction. James froze, his fork hovering in mid-air. The silence that followed was so thick it felt suffocating. Eventually he managed to stutter. Are you sure?" Nicole nodded. "I took multiple tests. I also saw Dr. Lisa Brown at St. George's Clinic this afternoon. She confirmed it." He set his fork down, exhaling slowly. I see, the tension in his voice was more evident than happiness. "That's big news. I don't know what to say right now." Nicole felt a stab of hurt. She had expected a mixture of shock and joy, maybe even tears of happiness. Instead, he seemed conflicted, as though he were calculating consequences rather than celebrating a life-changing miracle. When the initial awkwardness passed, James swallowed hard and forced a strained smile. "We'll figure this out," he said, reaching for her hand. I'm here for you." Yet, the words felt hollow. Nicole sensed the uncertainty beneath them. Later that night, James tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Nicole watched him, tears slipping silently down her face as she realized that her dream of a blissful marriage and an excited father-to-be was rapidly disintegrating into something far more complicated. Over the following weeks, James's behavior shifted again. He was more attentive to Nicole, but in a way that felt forced. He made a show of picking up prenatal vitamins for her, asked about her doctor's visits, and occasionally accompanied her to checkups. But the sense of love, of genuine excitement, was absent. It was as though he were fulfilling a duty he hadn't planned for. During this time, Nicole was surprised when she stopped receiving invites to certain high society events. It seemed as though James was attending more exclusive gatherings alone, claiming they were strictly business or investor-related dinners. One such evening, Nicole was clearing the table after an early dinner when her phone buzzed. A text message from Sarah Delgado, her closest friend from college, just saw James at the Monarch Hotel's rooftop bar. "He's with Vanessa Caldwell." Nicole's breath caught. She set the plate she was carrying down with trembling hands. She wanted to believe it was purely a business meeting. Maybe Vanessa had an investment opportunity. Maybe James had run into her by coincidence. But the repeated coincidences were too many for comfort. When James returned home that night, Nicole tried to broach the subject gently. "How was your meeting?" she asked, keeping her tone casual, though her heart pounded. He paused, loosening his tie. "It was fine. Tedious, really." "Where did you go?" Nicole pressed, watching him closely. James avoided her gaze. "Just a small, private club. You wouldn't have liked it." Nicole felt a rush of anger and sorrow. She wanted to confront him. Why lie to me? Why hide that Vanessa was there? But fear of his reaction and the state of their fragile bond kept her silent. She merely nodded and retreated to bed, tears stinging her eyes. In the darkness, she told herself that if he were having an affair, he'd at least have the decency to end their engagement before the baby arrived right. A month later, Nicole's worst fear was confirmed. She had gone to the city for a routine prenatal appointment. James had claimed he was swamped with work, so he didn't accompany her. After the checkup, Nicole stepped out into the chilly afternoon air, wondering if she should surprise James at his office with lunch. She wanted to do something spontaneous, something that might rekindle their connection. Her heart pounded as she made her way to Harrington Investments, a sleek glass tower that loomed above the bustling streets. She managed to get through security by showing her engagement ring and explaining that she was James's fiancée. A polite receptionist who recognized her escorted her up to James's private floor. When the elevator doors slid open, Nicole stepped into the luxurious reception area, adorned with modern art and minimalist furniture. She paused at the sound of a familiar, lilting laugh echoing down the corridor. Vanessa Caldwell. Curious, Nicole crept forward, her pulse hammering. She followed the voices to James's private office, the door slightly ajar. Inside, she could see James leaning against his mahogany desk, arms folded. Vanessa stood dangerously close, resting a hand on his chest. Nicole held her breath as she heard the conversation clearly. "Don't worry," Vanessa purred. "I won't say anything, but you can't keep me waiting forever. I've waited long enough while you try to figure out your situation with Nicole." James exhaled heavily, brushing a lock of hair away from Vanessa's face. "I'm doing what I can. I just need more time." "How much more?" Vanessa asked, her tone laced with irritation. "You promised you'd deal with this before the child becomes an issue." Nicole felt her entire body go numb. It was as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. She couldn't breathe. James's mistress. The words thundered in her mind. He had promised to take care of this? Were they talking about the pregnancy? Tears blurred her vision as she stumbled away from the door, nearly dropping the lunch she had brought. She managed to get back to the elevator without attracting attention. Once inside, she collapsed against the mirrored wall, sobbing uncontrollably. Nicole spent the afternoon at a nearby cafe, her mind a chaotic swirl of despair and rage. She replayed the moment again and again in her head, searching for any possibility she might have misinterpreted. But it was painfully clear James was involved with Vanessa, and they'd been seeing each other behind her back. By evening, Nicole returned to the estate, her eyes swollen from crying. James was already home, pacing the foyer, and looked visibly relieved when she walked in. "Where have you been?" he demanded, worry laced in his voice. "I called your phone a dozen times. Why didn't you answer?" Nicole stared at him through narrowed, tear-stained eyes. "I was at your office." His face paled. "My office? Why?" She cut him off, her voice trembling with anger and betrayal. "I heard you. I saw you with Vanessa." The color drained further from James's face. He reached out for her, but Nicole recoiled. "Nicole," he began, "it's not what you think. Don't insult me," she hissed, her voice quavering with pent-up pain. "I heard everything. You've been lying to me, stringing me along while keeping her close, even as I'm carrying your child." He looked stricken, unable to form words. Nicole could almost see his mind scrambling for excuses. Finally, he managed, "I didn't want it to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you. Vanessa and I, it's complicated. We have history and Nicole stopped him, a sob strangling her voice. "I gave you everything. I left my life behind to be with you, to become part of your world. And now I'm pregnant with your child, and you're still choosing her?" He stepped forward, and for a moment Nicole thought he would beg for forgiveness. But instead he said, "Vanessa's father is a major investor in my ventures. Our families go back a long way. I tried to do the right thing by being with you, because I did love you, but the pressure from her side, it's enormous. I can't just dismiss it. You don't understand the alliances in this world." Nicole's eyes went wide with shock. "So you're saying you're staying with her because of business deals and family alliances?" Her voice rose to a near scream. "What about our child? Do I mean nothing to you?" His gaze faltered. In that moment, Nicole realized that the man she had loved, the man who once helped her pick up napkins in a ballroom, was gone. Or perhaps that man had never truly existed. Maybe it was just a persona he used to lure her into his life until she was no longer convenient. Trembling, she turned on her heel, ignoring his pleas for her to come back and talk. She ran upstairs to the master bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and stuffed in whatever clothes and essentials she could. James tried to stop her at the foot of the stairs, but she glared at him with a cold rage that made him step aside. "I'm leaving," she said through gritted teeth. I'm going to figure out what to do with this baby, but I'll do it without you. Don't you dare try to contact me until you've decided whether you even want to be a father." She stormed out, her heart beating so fast she thought she might pass out. Through tear-filled eyes, she started her car and drove off into the night, leaving behind the grand estate that had once felt like a storybook dream. For the next few weeks, Nicole crashed on Sarah Delgado's couch in a cramped apartment downtown. In those close quarters, with minimal privacy, Nicole felt her emotions swinging wildly. She battled depression, anger, and a profound sense of loss. She had walked away from a life of luxury, but also from the man she had once believed was her forever love. She avoided James's calls and texts. He left voicemails, apologizing, pleading, sometimes angry that she wouldn't listen. But Nicole was too wounded to face him. She focused on her pregnancy, on the life growing inside her. She took on freelance marketing projects, scraping together enough money to support herself. She refused to accept financial help from James. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Meanwhile, rumors flew in the social circles. One popular gossip blogger wrote, "The elusive fiancé of James Harrington has vanished from the scene. Sources say the wedding is off, and James is back in contact with an old flame." Another claimed, "Insiders confirm that Vanessa Caldwell has been seen wearing a ring suspiciously similar to a family heirloom." Nicole felt her heartbreak deepen with each fresh rumor, but she refused to let it break her spirit entirely. She told herself she had to be strong, not just for her own sake, but for her unborn child. 3 months later, Nicole had saved enough money to rent a small one-bedroom apartment in a quieter part of the city. It wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. She decorated it with simple furniture, a few warm rugs, and baby items she picked up at thrift stores. The reality of becoming a single mother weighed on her heavily, but she fought to maintain hope. One afternoon, a package arrived with no return address. Inside, Nicole found an ornate scrapbook filled with memories, photos from their earliest dates, ticket stubs from concerts, pressed flowers from bouquets James had given her. Tucked into the last page was a note in James's handwriting. "I know I messed up. I wish I could turn back time. I still love you and want to be a father to our child. Please let me fix this." Nicole's hands shook as she flipped through the scrapbook. Memories poured back, their first conversation at the gala, the proposal on the rooftop, the nights filled with laughter. How had it all gone so wrong? Despite the pain, she couldn't deny that a part of her still loved him. She had dreamed of building a family with him. For days, she paced her small apartment, torn between her yearning for a stable family life and her dread of repeating the same betrayal. Ultimately, she decided to see him, if only to demand clarity and closure. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near her apartment. Nicole walked in, her belly now visibly rounded under a loose dress. James stood up from a corner table, looking both anxious and relieved to see her. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and looked more disheveled than she remembered. The once immaculately confident James seemed rattled. They sat across from each other, awkward silence filling the space. Finally, Nicole broke the tension. "I got your package. Why did you send it?" James took a deep breath. "I'm trying to make amends. I want us to have a chance, me, you, and the baby." Nicole bit her lip to stop the tears forming. "How can I believe you? You betrayed me in the worst possible way. Vanessa," he rubbed his forehead, looking genuinely pained. "Vanessa and I had a complicated history. Our families wanted us together for business and social reasons, but it wasn't love. At least, not for me. I was weak and let them pressure me into an affair, convincing me that I'd lose my empire if I didn't play along. It's no excuse, but it's the truth. I didn't realize until it was almost too late that all the money and power in the world means nothing if I lose you and our child." Nicole's eyes flashed with anger. So you're choosing me now after all of that? What if Vanessa's father pulls out his investments? Will you run back to her? No, James said firmly, his voice cracking. I swear, I'm done with that. I've been negotiating with other investors so that I'm no longer under Vanessa's father's thumb. I ended it with her. She watched him carefully, searching for any sign of manipulation or deceit. I don't know if I can trust you again. You've broken so many promises. James lowered his head. I understand, but I'm begging you to give me a chance to prove myself. Let me be there for you during the pregnancy. Let me support you. Even if you can't forgive me, at least let me be the father our child deserves. Nicole felt her heart twist. She wanted a stable life for her baby. I'm willing to let you be in our child's life, she said quietly. But as for us, that's going to take a lot more time to repair, if it can be repaired at all. For the next few hours, they talked, discussing practical details. Nicole insisted on financial boundaries. She refused to take lavish sums of money, but agreed to let James help with prenatal care and essentials for the baby. She made it clear that trust was something he would have to earn back inch by inch, if ever. James looked both relieved and devastated, but he accepted her conditions, knowing he had no one to blame but himself. Slowly, James re-entered Nicole's life in a peripheral way. He accompanied her to doctor's appointments, carefully remaining polite and respectful of her boundaries. He asked about her health, brought her nutritious meals, even bought a few baby books to educate himself. Nicole saw genuine remorse in his actions, but she also remembered how easily he had lied before. As the due date approached, their interactions became more frequent. James would text, "How are you feeling today?" Or "Did the baby kick?" He created a makeshift nursery in one of his estate's rooms, hoping that one day Nicole might let him have overnight visits with the baby. Nicole was touched by his effort, but remained cautious. One evening, after a particularly detailed ultrasound, Nicole sat in her small apartment, surrounded by baby clothes and gear she'd been organizing. James had driven her home from the clinic, and they were both sipping tea. The conversation drifted to the future, to the kind of parents they hoped to be. "I want our child to know they're loved," James said softly. "I don't want them to ever feel second to anything else: business, money, or social expectations." Nicole swallowed hard. "Words are easy, James. Actions are what matter." He nodded. "I know." As the months passed, Vanessa faded from the picture. Nicole heard rumors that Vanessa had moved on to another wealthy suitor, desperate to maintain her status. James severed his business ties with Vanessa's family, securing alternative investors. It was a risky move that cost him a significant portion of his holdings, but he told Nicole it was worth it if it meant breaking free from the web of manipulations that had ensnared him. All the while, Nicole's belly grew, and a mix of excitement and trepidation filled her days. She dreaded the possibility of heartbreak, but also couldn't deny the relief she felt at James's steady presence. Every time he brought her a cup of ginger tea to soothe her morning sickness, or put his hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick, she glimpsed the man she had once loved so wholeheartedly. The baby arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon. Nicole's labor was long and difficult, lasting over 15 hours. James stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, and murmuring words of encouragement. For a moment in that delivery room, it felt like they were united again, bound by a shared purpose that transcended their troubled history. Finally, a healthy baby boy was born. Nicole burst into tears when she heard his first cry. James's eyes shone with emotion as he cut the umbilical cord, his hands trembling. They named him Noah Parker Harrington, combining Nicole's last name with James's to reflect their complex journey. When Nicole held Noah in her arms, every betrayal, every heartbreak seemed distant. She felt an all-consuming love for this tiny life. James hovered beside her, tears slipping down his cheeks. "He's beautiful," he whispered, gently brushing the baby's soft hair. In that moment, Nicole saw sincerity in James's expression. Perhaps fatherhood was the catalyst for real change in him. Perhaps he would finally understand that love and loyalty couldn't be bought or manipulated. Over the next few months, Nicole focused on motherhood. She set up a steady schedule for Noah, balancing her freelance marketing work while caring for her newborn. James visited frequently, bringing diapers, groceries, or simply taking over so Nicole could nap or take a leisurely shower. He was calm, devoted, and patient, traits Nicole wished she had seen during their engagement. Still, she couldn't bring herself to move back into the estate. She wanted more time to trust him. Part of her worried she might never fully trust again, but she didn't want to deprive Noah of a father's presence. So they forged an arrangement. James spent weekends at Nicole's apartment and took Noah for walks in the nearby park, while Nicole had her independence during the week. During these visits, James would cook breakfast, read business articles aloud, and do his best to win back the playful camaraderie they once shared. He seemed earnest about rebuilding what was broken. But the biggest question, would Nicole ever marry him, remained unanswered. She held onto the ring he'd given her in a small jewelry box, not on her finger. Whenever James tried to broach the topic, she deflected, saying she needed more time. One sunny afternoon, Sarah Delgado convinced Nicole to join her for a day out, leaving Noah in James's care. They strolled through Boston's vibrant downtown, browsing shops and sipping iced coffee. Sarah, who had watched Nicole's emotional ordeal closely, finally said, "You look lighter, happier." Nicole exhaled. "I am, in a way. I have Noah. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Sarah nodded, then ventured cautiously, "Do you think you'll ever forgive James enough to start over?" Nicole hesitated. "I don't know. He's trying so hard, and I do believe he's changed. But that betrayal," she let her voice trail off. The memory of him and Vanessa stung like a fresh wound whenever she thought about it. Later that evening, Nicole returned to her apartment. She found James cradling Noah, humming a lullaby. The sight melted a piece of her heart. He looked up when she entered, his face lighting up with a smile. "He just fell asleep," he whispered. "How was your day?" "It was nice," Nicole replied softly, setting her purse down. "Sarah and I caught up. I realized I'm not the same person I was when I first met you. So much has changed." James carefully laid Noah in his bassinet. "I know I'm not the same person either. I want you to know I love you, Nicole. I never stopped, even when I made the worst mistake of my life." He paused, his gaze drifting to the small jewelry box on the coffee table. "I still hope that one day you'll wear that ring again." Nicole's throat tightened. She approached him, looking into his eyes. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to remember the early days of their relationship, the excitement, the laughter, the genuine connection. Despite all the heartbreak, part of her still loved him. "I'm not ready yet," she said, her voice trembling, "but I'm also not shutting the door. We have a child together, James. We owe it to him, and maybe to ourselves, to see if we can find our way back." James's expression was a mixture of relief and sorrow. He gently pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll wait as long as it takes. I promise I'll never betray you again." Over the following year, James's actions spoke louder than his words ever could. He balanced fatherhood with a new approach to business, one that didn't hinge on shady alliances or manipulative deals. He invested in smaller, community-driven projects, seeking to make amends for the ruthless ambition that had cost him his integrity and nearly destroyed his future with Nicole. Nicole, for her part, continued growing her freelance marketing business, forging her own independence. She relied on James's help with Noah, but never in a way that made her feel trapped or indebted. Slowly she let James back into her heart, sharing jokes, letting him hold her close during family outings, and even going on a couple of dates, just the two of them. Yet each time they approached intimacy, a flicker of pain would cross Nicole's face. Memories of Vanessa's hand on James's chest in that office, and his callous admission, still haunted her. She wasn't sure how long it would take for that scar to heal, or if it ever truly would. James seemed to understand and never pushed, allowing Nicole to lead the way. On Noah's first birthday, they held a small party in the garden behind Nicole's apartment complex. Friends gathered, including Sarah, who cooed over how adorable Noah was. Nicole and James stood together, singing Happy Birthday while Noah babbled happily. In that fleeting moment of celebration, Nicole felt a sense of profound gratitude for her child, for her own strength, and for the glimmer of hope that perhaps love can be salvaged if both people are willing to fight for it. Still, the question of marriage lingered unspoken. If it happened again, it would be on Nicole's terms, not under pressure, not overshadowed by deception. James understood. He spent that day focusing solely on their child, making silly faces to make Noah giggle, and helping Nicole serve slices of birthday cake to friends. As evening fell and the guests departed, Nicole found herself alone with James. Noah slept peacefully in his crib, tuckered out by all the excitement. Nicole gazed at James, who was picking up discarded gift wrapping from the grass. "Hey," she called softly. He turned, a curious smile on his face. "Yeah?" She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "I'm proud of you. The way you've changed, the way you've become a wonderful father to Noah, it means more than I can say." James let the wrapping paper fall from his hands. He walked over, and for a moment they stood there under the dusky sky, the last rays of sunlight catching the specks of glitter on the lawn. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied. "And I won't stop trying to be better for you and for him." Nicole felt warmth spread through her chest. She leaned in, letting him wrap his arms around her. They stood like that for a long time, neither speaking, both aware of the delicate thread that bound them, strong enough to hold on, yet fragile enough to break if tested too harshly. In that gentle moment, Nicole realized that while she might never forget the pain he had caused, she could learn to forgive, and in forgiveness there was room for growth, for a new beginning that might still lead to the life she once dreamed of, a life where love was genuine, trust was earned, and family was everything. Their journey was far from over. The scars of betrayal would remain, a cautionary reminder of how easily love can be corrupted by ambition and secrecy. But as Nicole placed her hand in James's and felt his fingers tighten around hers, she allowed herself a quiet, cautious hope. Maybe, just maybe, a family once torn apart could find its way to healing, and that, in itself, was a story worth believing in. Stories of love and betrayal remind us that passion can ignite in a flash, yet trust might take years to rebuild once it's broken. Nicole's journey taught her that no amount of wealth can guarantee happiness if a relationship is built on lies and uncertain loyalties. Yet her choice to walk away pregnant, scared, and heartbroken was also the first step toward discovering her own inner strength. Even after all the deception, she found a reason to hope. She refused to let anger define her future or her child's. If you found meaning in Nicole's struggle, or if you simply enjoy stories that pull back the curtain on high society secrets, please show your support. Like the video, share it with someone who loves a twist-filled drama, and subscribe to this channel for more real-life tales that challenge our understanding of love, power, and redemption. Your engagement means the world.